Hey everyone, tonight, we're drifting back into candlelit halls and echoing stone corridors, into bedrooms where kings lay surrounded by silk, incense, and very bad medical advice. Because tonight's story is not about heroic battles, or glorious victories, or shining crowns. Tonight is about the kings who were ruling entire kingdoms, while quietly, and sometimes not so quietly, dying. So settle in, lower the lights, let your shoulders relax, because of course they pretended everything was fine, and naturally, it made everything worse. Charles II of Spain was born in 1661. He arrived into the world already exhausted, which, in hindsight, was an excellent summary of his reign. His family tree was not so much a tree as a very confused wreath. For generations, the Habsburgs had married their own relatives, cousins, uncles, nieces, people who probably should have remained politely distant at weddings. And Charles was the result. He could not speak properly until he was 4. He could not walk properly until he was 8. He could not chew his food without assistance. And his jaw, the famous Habsburg jaw, jutted forward like a stubborn shelf. Naturally, he was crowned king anyway, because nothing says stability like placing a severely ill child in charge of an empire. Doctors hovered around him constantly, bleeding him, purging him, applying poultices that smelled like despair and garlic.
And through it all, Charles ruled, very gently, very slowly, and very much while dying. He suffered seizures, chronic infections, and long, quiet fevers that never truly left. Yet court painters depicted him as strong, healthy, majestic, because of course they did. And when Charles finally died in 1700, Europe held its breath, because his broken body had been holding together an entire continent. And when it failed, so did the peace. Let's drift north, to England, to a king who once looked athletic, charming, and dangerous in a very flattering way. Henry VIII did not start his reign dying. He worked very hard to achieve that later. By his 40s, Henry was enormous. His leg wounds refused to heal. They oozed, they rotted, and they smelled so badly that courtiers learned to smile politely through it. He could barely walk. He could barely sit. He could barely tolerate anyone telling him the truth, which was inconvenient. Yet he ruled, from beds, from chairs, from litters carried by sweating servants. Doctors fed him wine, meat, sugar, and optimism, then bled him anyway. He suffered fevers, infections, and moods that swung like a very tired executioner's axe. Naturally, he kept making enormous decisions, executing wives, breaking with Rome, rewriting the religion of England, all while quietly dying. By the end, Henry's body was failing, but his authority remained terrifying, which is perhaps the most dangerous combination of all. Let's float gently into France, into Versailles, where everything glittered and everyone was deeply uncomfortable. Louis XIV ruled for 72 years, which is impressive and also medically baffling. In his later years, he was not well. He lost his teeth. He lost his appetite. He lost the ability to enjoy soup, which, tragically, was most of his diet. His leg developed gangrene. Doctors debated, then amputated. Too late. Louis continued holding court, from his bed, surrounded by courtiers pretending not to notice. The smell. He whispered orders, signed papers, and maintained absolute authority, while his body quietly collapsed beneath him. When he finally died in 1715, he left behind a kingdom exhausted by his long, slow illness, and a tiny, fragile great-grandson who would inherit everything. Naturally, nothing went smoothly after that. Ivan the Terrible, a throne built on illness and fear. Let's drift east now, to Russia, to a man who ruled while physically and emotionally unraveling. Ivan IV suffered chronic pain, fevers, and possibly mercury poisoning from medical treatments. He grew paranoid, violent, and deeply afraid of betrayal. He ruled while sick, while hallucinating, while lashing out, and everyone pretended this was fine, because the alternative was worse. His illness shaped his reign. His reign shaped Russia, and neither healed. Let's return to Spain, to a quieter tragedy. Ferdinand VI was gentle, sensitive, and deeply unwell. When his beloved wife died, so did his will to live. He stopped eating, stopped speaking, stopped ruling. Yet he remained king. Doctors tried music therapy, prayer, bleeding. Nothing worked. He ruled for years, while emotionally and physically disappearing, until he finally did. Closing drift. So tonight, as the candles dim and the halls fall quiet, remember this gentle truth. Empires were often held together by bodies that were already breaking. Kings ruled while dying, and the world pretended not to notice. Sleep well.